Welcome everybody. This is the General SharePoint Development Special Interest Group, and this is February 6th community call. It is 2020, not 2019 anymore. Finally getting on hang of it. It takes like more than a month to actually get rid of all of those mistakes. It is the bi-weekly community call on General SharePoint, and this is the community call where we talk about everything except SharePoint Framework and client-side development topics. So yes, we can touch those topics as well, absolutely, but there's a separate community call for SharePoint Framework and then this one. So in here, we talk about different patterns, practices, solution designs, provisioning, maybe, let's say, Power Platform integration might be in here from a SharePoint perspective, and CSOM graph APIs would fall potentially on the category as well. Now, let's actually get moving on today's agenda. I have a few general slides before we start with the updates on the PnP CSOM Core, PnP PowerShell, and the modernization tooling. So quickly running through those so people are up to date what's happening in those open source projects. Then we have 3 demos coming up. So we have demo from Chris Kent. It is a column view formatting demo. To be honest, I have no idea what it is, but I know that Chris has prepared a demo. Last time it was really cool, related on how to integrate and how to use the view and column formatting in the context of Teams. And that was a really cool demo. If you haven't checked it out, it's in the YouTube channel as well. The YouTube channel address is AKMS SP Dev Videos or www.youtube.com/SharePoint PnP. That actually redirects to the right location as well, if you need to find it. The second demo is from Anup Tatti from Content and Code. It's around introduction to PnP Office 365 CLI GitHub Actions for SharePoint Framework solutions. And this is really cool. I haven't had a chance personally to have a look on the GitHub Actions and how you can automate things in GitHub. But basically, there's a contribution from Anup related on this one, and it's using Office 365 CLI behind the scenes, and it looks really, really promising. So I'm curious on actually seeing that one live as well. And then Paolo is going to do the latest upcoming capabilities on the PnP provisioning engine and the schema. So there's a new provisioning schema coming from the PnP tenant templates, which you can use to automate things in Microsoft Teams, in OneDrive, in Azure AD even, or in SharePoint. So you can provision multiple site collections, site designs, site scripts using this automation tooling. And Paolo is going to walk through what's actually happening there and what are the new bits and pieces on that side. Now, during the presentation and while we're talking and presenting, feel free to ask questions and have a discussion on the chat window. Now, a few updates, kind of a typical slides as well. So please, reminders, if you're looking into contributing, we more than welcome people to actually do demo solutions or technical patterns in this call. So please ping me or any of the other people in the community team to schedule to do a demo. So if you're looking into, if you want to have exposure for yourself or you build something cool and you want to demo that, it doesn't necessarily have to be an open source thing, but but something which is useful for other people in the community as well. So you can actually show things, you can demonstrate functionality, but this should not be sales pitches either. So that's not what we're looking for. It's not about selling your product, but it's about teaching other people in the community for something. You can definitely contribute in GitHub, more than welcome. And most important thing, provide feedback, provide feedback, provide feedback. If something isn't working and we need to improve, let us know. The only way we can improve is for you to telling us what's wrong. Quick URL list of things: SharePoint Dev Docs, AKMS SP Dev Docs documentation. We will, by the way, do a quite big and drastic table of content chains quite soon on the docs. We were just having meetings about that one earlier today, so there will be more clarity on what is the up-to-date technology, what is the up-to-date guidance, and what's not. So that should actually help on there. SharePoint Dev Videos, we actually are way past 14,000 subscribers already in the SharePoint Dev Videos, which are not just about SharePoint Dev, by the way. They're also about Microsoft Teams and Graph and Microsoft Search and many, many other things as well. So we are looking into changing that kind of a terminology as well. So it won't be necessarily SharePoint PnP or SharePoint Dev Videos only in that channel as well. SharePoint Dev Issues, however, is still in the AKMS SP Dev Issues. So if you're running into any issues with SharePoint Framework or any other extensibility model, we have multiple people helping on the incoming questions over there. So please take advantage of that. And then open source at github.com/SharePoint and github.com/PnP are the locations for that. Now, a few kind of reminders or kind of a general slides or let's say announcements. And this one we keep on having on the calls as well. If you don't feel comfortable enough yet to contribute in a GitHub or even consume the GitHub, please go to AKMS Sharing is Caring. So this is initiative driven by David Warner, which helps you to learn how to use GitHub. Because we do acknowledge that there's a lot of people who are not familiar with the open sourcing and GitHub tooling. So please take advantage of these trainings and opportunities through Sharing is Caring initiative. So really, really great stuff for people to get started. A few kind of other announcements or news from our side. Our SharePoint Dev monthly community call is coming next Tuesday at 8 a.m. Pacific time, and we'll have actually a slightly special call this time. Again, we're always trying to have one topic on things to concentrate. So obviously we'll go through the monthly summary of contributions, the monthly things what has happened, and the use of our status and other things. But we'll have AMA for SharePoint Framework and the SharePoint Framework V Next. So if you're interested on what's the latest on the app source support for SharePoint Framework, or are we looking into having what are the advantages or the plans related on the vNext? Is it going to be called Microsoft Framework, Microsoft 365 Framework, or what will it be called? Join on this monthly call and have those questions ready. You can actually send the questions already beforehand by using AKMS M365 PnP input is the URL. And from there, you can actually, there's a simple form, there's a free text box. And if you want to, you can actually provide your name and email, which is completely optional, but you can submit your questions beforehand. And it would be great if we would have set of questions before the call. And then obviously during the call, if the chat works, and for those people who the chat works, they can actually then ask those questions over there. Luca Bandinelli is the principal program manager who technically owns SharePoint Framework from a PM perspective. I own some of the features there as well, but Luca is the primary guy. Pat Miller owns the SharePoint Framework engineering. So he is actually the lead behind of SharePoint Framework, and John Nugent is one of the main developers on the SharePoint Framework. So we have the right people in the room who can answer any question what you might have related on SharePoint Framework or the SharePoint Framework, the next being the unified extensibility model. Now, kind of related on that one, we talk about the unified extensibility model more and more. I don't know if you noticed this. Yesterday, there was a pretty big organizational change in Microsoft where Teams is now bundled and in the same organization structure together with OneDrive and SharePoint. So now we're really kind of targeting and building to do a unified collaboration, the best possible collaboration platform in the world, taking advantage of OneDrive, taking advantage of SharePoint, and taking advantage of Teams. It doesn't obviously immediately change anything, but that gives you the indication where we're heading and within the Microsoft side as well. So it's a one unified organization where we then start building together the best possible platform for you as well to take advantage, which is pretty cool. Now, a few other things and news. Latest CSOM version came out, 19.7.24. This is a typical monthly release of CSOM, which we will keep on doing still. There is no explicit ETA yet for the .NET Core version of CSOM, but it is being worked on. So you should see development on that one during this spring. We are confident that we'll get the version out. We understand that people should have it, and it is numbered, I think it's top 3 user voice entry now in SharePoint. So absolutely understandable that .NET Core version has to come out, and we're working on that one. We also released a new version of SharePoint Online Management Shell earlier this week as well. So just updating you on that one as well, which is basically matching with the CSOM version, what is there as well. Now, and a quick number update. So on January 2020, the growth of SharePoint Framework grew worldwide 6.5%, which is actually quite decent because the numbers are already massive. So 6.5% is actually quite a nice growth. We had 49,000 views in SharePoint Dev YouTube channel, generating 247 watch time minutes, which is quite a decent number. What's really cool also around our open source components. So worldwide, every single second, there's 7,814 requests going through to SharePoint Online through the PnP components. And that's a massive number, by the way. It's mind-blowing how much these open source components are being used. 30,000 tenants. Yeah, sorry.
It comes down to 21 billion requests a month, more or less.
Yes. Fair point.
It's really massive, yeah.
Yeah, it's quite mind-blowing actually. So it's yeah, and even the fact that there's a system. Somebody said it earlier that there's a system which is able to even even serve this amount of requests in this amount of time, which is quite actually impressive. Now,
these are all-time highs as well. So
the usage is growing all the time. We have 1,244 overall contributors in the GitHub, and that keeps on growing as well. Now that Bert is actually there as well, and I know that you were there, let's do a quick update on what's happening on the PnP CSOM Core library.
Sure. PnP CSOM Core. So we plan to release the February version normally tomorrow, maybe Monday, but Monday will be latest. So you should have it early next week latest. And the key new thing will be the February 2020 schema. That will be the default schema in the February release. And Paolo will give you all the details about the schema, what's changed, etc. Today in this call. Furthermore, we had some page API, modern page API improvements, some small things. There were some very old pages that didn't load properly, which has been fixed right now. A number of smaller fixes. So not a massive amount of progress in this one. There is still some pending PRs that we are looking into. Probably will get some of them still merged before the February release though, so that should be good. And you see in the graph, the bottom right graph, that indeed we have like almost 26,000 tenants using this PnP CSOM Core library, which is like a super big number.
Yeah, within a month. So
within a month, yeah, each month.
Yeah,
this is monthly active tenants.
Yeah.
Right.
Let's move to PnP PowerShell. I think Irving is booked on other things, unless I'm completely mistaken.
Yeah,
so.
Irving is somewhere in the air, I think, flying. So with PnP PowerShell, same story. Upcoming release tomorrow or Monday. Several new commandlets and some work there. So we deprecated the original enable PnP ComSite commandlet and build a new one. So enable PnP ComSite is the commandlet that you can use to take a team site and transform it into a communication site. So you will get the top navigation. You can use full width sections. So your team site really becomes a communication site. Initially, there was like a tenant scoped operation, but it never fully rolled out. And now we have a new API for that we're calling from here, which works for any. You don't have to be tenant admin, but a regular site collection admin or site owner, you can do this operation. So try it out. It's not yet available. We're rolling this out in targeted release in the coming months. But once it's available for you, you can really then upgrade your team sites. Furthermore, we have some new commandlets around. One to get an access token from management API, a new commandlet to get the audit logs, and some cool commandlets to generate site scripts from existing lists and existing web. So that's pretty cool as well. And like with PnP Core, the usage of PowerShell also hit all-time highs, 15,000 tenants using PnP PowerShell, which is amazing.
Yep. And moving on the last kind of a project update, which is the modernization tooling.
Modernization. Yep. All right. So again, same story. February next Friday will be the new version.
Tomorrow.
So for
next
tomorrow,
Friday.
yeah,
Tomorrow.
So, yeah. The next version will be on tomorrow. Yeah, whatever. Good. So there is some updates in the page transformation. So just for folks, page transformation is the technique, the tool that you can use to take existing classic pages, wiki pages, web pages, publishing pages, blog pages, develop blog pages, and convert them into modern pages. One of the things that we fixed, that we made better, is this scenario where you have like a publishing page, and in publishing pages based upon a page layout. And sometimes folks put like hard-coded text in their page layout. So you have like a header in the page layout, hard-coded, and then underneath there is a piece of HTML that the user provides. Now, how do you kind of handle that hard-coded header? That's that was a question, and we had a basic solution, but now we have a better solution. Essentially, now you can kind of prefix and suffix any publishing HTML field with additional text, so you can put a header or a footer quite easily. For SharePoint 2010, we improved web part handling when the web part lives in a web part zone. So we previously fixed web part handling when the web part lived in like a wiki zone, a wiki text, but now it's also fixed for the actual web part zones. We did some work around managed metadata, so you can define default managed metadata field values, so default terms, to to be set if there is no value, and some minor fixes. The big upcoming thing will be taxonomy mapping. So work is ongoing for that one. It will not be ready for the February release, but we're targeting the March release for this one, which in my view is one of the last missing pieces to really enable you to do a full transformation from on-prem to online. This will allow you to kind of say like this term in on-prem will be this term in online, and then things will be mapped up during transformation time. For the actual modernization scanner, nothing really happened. So the 2.8 was out already for a couple of weeks. So we don't have any current plans to release 2.9 at this point in time. If there is something that you need from a scanning perspective, just let us know. Meaning, if there's no demand to add things to make things better there, then we're not releasing any version. What else? Usage is growing. So you see the page transformation. So the middle graph of the first graph you see that January had like a pretty big spike in number of pages being transformed. So we crossed 100K per month. Actually, we crossed 500,000 pages altogether. So which is a nice milestone. So which proves that more and more folks are using it. And one last thing, and then I shut up. That's about the Delph block. Delph blocks are going away, and we will remove them completely from the system. Your pages will be gone in July. If you do nothing, then they're gone. So please, if you migrate them to modern pages, if you still want those pages. If you don't need them, fine. But if you need them, take action. All right, that's it, Vesa.
Cool. Excellent, excellent. Moving along within our typical road of the agenda is the demos. I think everybody is waiting for this as well. Well, some people are definitely interested on the updates on the projects as well. But the first person to start today is Chris Kent, DMI. What do we have, Chris, today? Horses?
What?
That's
crazy talk. I mean, yes, of course, but
take it away.
All right. Hey, everybody. So I'm Chris Kent. Let's get started. Let's talk about some things. All right. So go to our classic Warrior Horses site. Fun fact, I can't seem to change my theme right now, so maybe this isn't so bad. We'll just keep that. But you know what? Warrior Horses, they use a lot of cool formatting, do a lot of cool stuff, but even they have to have their own IT department for issue tracking and upgrading hardware. So if we go over to the Warrior Horses IT site, all right, over here we can see they've got a nice IT site, and one of the things they're doing, because they didn't want to pay for any other software, they created an issues list right here in their team site. So if we go over to the issues list, we can see here, it's pretty standard, pretty boring issues list, right? You got your issue here, when it was submitted, who it's assigned to, and a status. All right, and one of the things we've seen in the past, which is nice, is being able to take something like the status. Let me bump that up a little bit in size here. And we go come to the status, and we go to column settings, and we go to format this column. All right, we can choose from the nice design mode here and apply some cool colors directly to those statuses, and that's cool. But what if we want to do icons, right? So this is pretty straightforward. It's something we've done many times before, and I'm just going to copy and paste a format, and we'll talk about it here. All right, so if I preview that, all I'm doing here is I'm taking a look, right? So the value can be not started, in progress, or resolved. And all I'm doing is this kind of if statement here with the icons, right? Current field not started, then use this icon, otherwise use this icon, and if it's none of those, use this icon. And then do the same thing for the color. That's pretty cool. That's straightforward. And you do something like that, and the PM or your Scrum Master or whoever is really excited. Wow, now I can tell what's going on. But what if they decide to get fancy, which often happens, right? Come in here, and now they've taken this status column, and instead they've created this Uber status column because they wanted even more information, right? So we apply that, and we start to see now they've taken that, and they've combined basically what's two different fields into one, right? They've taken that overall status of not started, and they've given a separate reason for it. So if we go to check those out, right, they've gone crazy. Look at all this, right? They got all these different versions of not started, in progress, and resolved, and now we're stuck like, how do we get those cool icons back, right? What is the answer that I create even a larger switch statement? Like, that's insane. Probably everyone will go through that. And of course, they're going to add more because, hey, they're PMs, they're Scrum Masters, and that's what they do. All right, so I could go in, and again, modify this format to have lots and lots of if statements for all these different things. Or I could be a little smarter and use something like index of. Now, we've talked about index of before, and I'm just going to edit this format so we can kind of see it. Well, let's edit this format here. So if we come here and we format this column, we'll go to advanced mode. And now if we wanted to say, let's just for testing purposes here, let's say elm type, and we'll just make it a div because that's exciting, right? And if we say our text content, in this case, is at current field, just so we can kind of see what it is, right? It's not going to look almost any different than this. You notice also that it's getting cut off, and that's, you know, obviously you can fix that here, but that's a personal setting, and, you know, letting people know that, fun stuff, right? So we do something like that, that kind of fixes that. That's already better, right? But what if I wanted to display those icons? I can use a cool formula. So one of the things we've talked about before was this idea of index of, right, where we can actually look at the value and we can inspect it. So we say at current field, we want to look inside there and we say, what's the index of, say, you know, not started. All right, and so if we do that, preview that guy, we'll start to see, oh, all the not started ones, it says it's 0, and one that doesn't have it are -1s, right? So that's kind of our contains. So we could do a check to see if, you know, if it has the words not started and resolved and done, and we could write something up with that. Or we could say starts with means it have to be at 0. So now we're getting a little smarter. So let's see if we take a look at that as with icons. All right, come here, we can paste this, preview that. You can see if we look a little bit here, we've actually done this index of current field not started. If it equals 0, in other words, it starts with not started, then we do the same thing we were doing before. Hey, that's all right. And index of is really helpful for inspecting elements, right? So, and we did a whole video about using kind of this contains and the starts with, and there's a few different samples available. And if you go to the YouTube channel, you'll be able to get to those. But what if we want to do something with the actual value, right? This just returns whether it's in there or not, right? So the value is always a number, right? What if I want to be able to do something fancier, right? And if we take a look, right, let's delete that and preview these values. We have something in common, right? It's got this colon right here. So what if we could find out what's before the colon and what's after the colon and use those values directly? Well, we can, right? So there's an operator. Again, we'll kind of type our silly starter one here, text content. There's an operator called substring, all lowercase like this. So substring, and we're going to say, look inside current field and tell me what's, you know, starting at 0 and ending at 4. So these are indexes of the string. So this is the number of characters, right? So 0 is the first character, 2 is the second character, and so on. All right, so give me the first 4 characters of this thing. All right, just show me that. Now if we preview that, hey, now we're getting somewhere, but you'll notice that these have different lengths, right? So not started is obviously different than resolved and in progress in terms of length. There is a length function available to you. Don't be confused by it, though. It is not the same as like an len function as you'd expect if you're a developer. But it will tell you how many characters in a string. Instead, it'll just tell you 1 if it's a string or 0 if it's empty. It's really for arrays. So in this case, though, right, I just want to see, you know, up to that semicolon. All right, so I can actually combine that index of, right, and I can say look inside current field and tell me where is the colon. And I'm going to use that value as the index I want to go up to. And when I preview that, wow, hey, I'm starting to extract that value, right? And the same is true if I wanted to say go to the end, right? So now we'll take that out. So I say this, I'm going to say, the nice thing is you can just put in 100 here because it'll just go past the string. So if I preview that, I did not close that. Let's close that. There we go. Got to get your parentheses right. Let's try that. There we go. Now we start to see I can get the second part of the value, right? I could say +2 to get rid of that. So, you know, the colon and the space. Preview that. Now I've got the second value. And I can do some really cool stuff with that. All right, so now we can take a sample available for you here in the SPDev list formatting GitHub repo. David will post the link here in a second, I'm sure. All right, but if we come in here into our column samples, and we scroll down here, we've got this nice new one called generic substring status. And here, if we just grab this JSON as it exists, and again, I'm right here in GitHub, but I'm not doing any fancy GitHub stuff. I'm just grabbing all that, and I'm going to copy it, and I'm going to go back, and I'm just going to paste it in this box. And when I preview that, Now we start to see something cool. All right, I'm doing the same detection we did before with the index of as it starts with to set my font color and my icon name. But now I'm actually breaking that value apart and showing it in a new way so that I can really see exactly what I want to do. So you start to see that using substring like that can be really, 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 really powerful. All right, so I'm going to save that. And now it doesn't matter if your Scrum Master or your PM adds 40 more columns to this thing. You can handle it and make it visually awesome, right? And the CEO can come by and say, oh, it looks like work's getting done, right? Whether it is or isn't. And that's great news. So if we come back just to review, again, there's a whole separate video about these contains that starts with the index of. But the main thing to note is if the value is not found inside the string you're looking inside, you get a -1. So all you have to do to check to see if a value is in there is determine if that value is not -1. And if you want to do a starts with, you just see if it's 0. Okay? But here's the extracting value. So the substring, again, has 3 parameters. It's a string to look inside, the start index, and the end index. Fun fact is the start index and the end index don't have to be in the right order. So if you wanted to say start index is 100 and end index is 0, you can. So, which is nice. You're not going to get an out of range exception or something along those lines. But again, keep in mind these are 0-based indexes. This no length function will come up at some point if we're trying to do certain types of string extraction. But if you just use a huge number, you'll go all the way to the end. And that works pretty well. But if you're trying to do something like getting value from the right side, that might be a little more difficult. And again, if you use that index of inside there, you can split a value. I say split in quotes there because it's not true splitting, right? You wouldn't split everywhere where there's a colon. There's also no last index of, right? So there's a couple of things there that, would be nice to have, but this is still super awesome and a huge leg up. And it allows you to do a lot more without having to create these calculated columns, right? They're creating your kind of, mashed up value while you're still looking at multiple values in different columns, and you have to have them in your view, and it gets really, well, that's sad, right? So now you can use the substring to do all that. So check out the full documentation on it. There are examples of how to use the substring, how to use the index of, and lots of other operators that you can combine in here. And be sure to check out our list formatted samples repo. We got 80+ samples there of how to do all sorts of different things, whether that's column formatting or view formatting. Plus this specific sample I showed you, the generic substring status, is available to you. So go check it out. That's all I got. Thanks.
Excellent. Thank you, Chris, on that one. Just one note on the GitHub. You run into any any column or view formatting issues, please open up those in the SP Dev docs. We do have engineering actually watching on those, but if you have issues related to any of these samples, please use SP Dev list formatting. So open up the sample in here. So just make sure that we are on the right location. And Chris is about to actually show the URL of SP Dev docs, right?
Yep. a.ms/spdev issues. Right, we'll take you straight to that issues list. There it is. Wow. All right.
So if there's any issues, general issues related on anything on column formatting, view formatting, please let us know. There are people in our engineering on day-to-day basis watching those. So please let us know.
All right.
Excellent. Thank you, Chris, for that one. I think it's time, and a lot of good feedback on the chat window as well. Now, let's actually move to Anoop's computer and have a look on what we can do with GitHub Actions. This is really, really cool as well.
Yes, thank you, Vesa. Right. Hello, everyone. Today we'll be looking at some of the GitHub Actions, in particular for SharePoint Framework projects. So the demo will be a combination of presentation first and then some demo in the end. Before starting, I would like to thank the Office 365 CLI team, in particular Wayland, Gary, and Waldek with all the help and input they provided during the development. Right. So my name is Anoop Tatti, and I'm a SharePoint developer at Content and Code. There's my Twitter and blog if you'd like to follow. So what are GitHub Actions? So, till last year on GitHub, we could only host the code and share it with our fellow developers or fellow community members. We didn't have the ability to run the code on GitHub. Last year, GitHub introduced something called as GitHub Actions, with which we can run the code on GitHub. How cool is that? So we will be looking at those GitHub Actions today. But to understand GitHub Actions, we need to understand what a GitHub workflow is. So a GitHub workflow, like any other workflow, is a set of tasks that get executed when an event happens in GitHub. So, for example, when you push a file onto a repository, you might want to build the code, test the code, deploy it, and then send an email to someone saying that it has been deployed, or send, say, 200 emails to the favorite person in your organization. You shouldn't do that, but yeah. So you can basically run a workflow in GitHub. So let's briefly look at this workflow structure. So there are different elements in a workflow. So the first one is, we start with the event. So that's the, whenever you push some code to the GitHub repo, or you create a pull request, or you open an issue, that's when the workflow triggers. And after that, you decide on a host machine, whether it's a Windows, Linux, or a Mac machine. This is because, if you want to build the code that you have just pushed or deploy the code, then we want it to run somewhere, right? So that's where, we decide on what host machine we want to use. And then there are a set of tasks that you can keep running. So a task in a workflow might be, say, a line of code just to print something, or several lines of code. You can write these in a GitHub workflow. Now, if the task is a common one, say like building the code or deploying the code, then someone would have already written the code for you. So all you can do is just consume that code in your workflow. So someone would have hosted the code in GitHub somewhere else, and all we can do in our workflow is just consume that code rather than writing the code ourselves. And this code that is hosted somewhere else, written by our fellow developers, are called as GitHub Actions. So in our workflow, instead of writing the whole code ourselves, we just start consuming these pieces of code, and these are called as GitHub Actions. We will see, the structure of the workflow, which is a YAML file, very soon. But yeah, before that, I just wanted to show you what it is exactly. Now, just a word on the events that trigger a GitHub workflow. So this event can be anything like a push or a pull request on a particular branch, when an issue is opened, a label is created, deleted, so many events. You just name them. GitHub have triggers for all those events. And regarding the VMs or the host machine where these workflows run, they're all hosted by GitHub. And if you think these are all open source, and if you think there is any software that is missing on the VM, you can submit a pull request. Someone from GitHub team will review that, and if okay, they'll accept the pull request. So that's pretty cool. Now, how do we create a workflow in GitHub repository? So if you have a repository in GitHub, all you have to do is just click on the Actions tab that I've highlighted over here, and then click. You get a button called Set up Workflow Yourself. So that will automatically create a YAML file for you. And once you save that, that's it. You have created a workflow. It's that simple. So what I've done here is I've just highlighted a simple workflow, and all that workflow does is just prints hello world. So if you see that I am saying on the push event, use the Windows latest machine, and then just write a script to say hello world. Of course, we have to write hello world because this is our first workflow. And when we push a file onto this repository, what we get is a nice execution, and then the workflow runs and prints hello world on the console. Now, if we have a SPFx project hosted in GitHub, we don't want to just print hello world when someone pushes a file. We want to, build the code, run some test cases, deploy the code, and then maybe send an email. So for that, we can make use of Office 365 CLI. And to explain Office 365 CLI, I'll pass it on to Welin.
Okay, I'll just pop up for 2 minutes. I won't even share the screen. Maybe Anoop, you can open the official site. So the Office 365 CLI is just a command line interface, similar to PnP PowerShell, that you can execute commands, and IT pros or DevOps guys or administrators, they can manage their tenants. They can also run automated scripts, or they can use the CLI into an automated pipelines, what we'll end up going to show. Another nice piece of functionality is that you can upgrade SPFx projects with the CLI, and you can run multiple reports and pull data, reporting data out of Office 365. Maybe if you can go to the examples, or just scroll down a little bit to show how easy it is to install. So the CLI can be installed with that single command. It runs on all operating systems. That means that you can run on Linux, macOS, or Windows, whatever you decide. And if you can go on the examples, just to show very quickly how the syntax looks, it's examples there. Just open one of those. Open the last one, lists activate SharePoint. So you can see that syntax here, we have a variable in PowerShell. And after that variable, it's the CLI command, and the CLI command pretty much looks like Azure CLI or NPM or Git, if you're familiar with those syntaxes. But once you run that command, it's collecting data from Office 365, and then we're outputting that data in a typical PowerShell manner down below. So it's briefly how to catch on the syntax. And this is pretty much from my side. Now Anoop will show how we can use the CLI in an automated pipeline and progress and move SPFx package all the way to production. Maybe Anoop, you can just move on. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you, Welin. So as Welin explained, what we have done is we have created some GitHub actions using Office 365 CLI that we can consume in our workflows, in our GitHub workflows for SharePoint Framework projects. So the first action is a login action. So what this does is it logs you into the Office into your tenant using CLI. We have to pass in the admin username and password. Now these are stored in something called as secrets in a GitHub repo. Secrets are something which you create once, and then you cannot edit them, or no one can view them except the actions. All you can do is just delete them. So they are very, very secret. So, and the next action is deploy app action. So what this does is it deploys the SPPKG file onto your tenant. So before running this action, we would have run a gulp package ship, and that would have created a file in the SharePoint /solution folder, and that's what we will be using to deploy. So we pass the path of that, and with a couple of other attributes, and then that takes care of deploying the SPPKG file onto your tenant. And finally, we have a generic action called as run script. To this action, you can execute any Office 365 CLI script. So in this case, I've shown an example of how you can send an email. So just to quickly explain the workflow that I'll be showing next. So we'll be using something, a CI/CD workflow in which, on push, we will use the host machine as Linux, and then we will do the basic things that we do for all SPFx projects, which is npm install, gulp bundle, and gulp package solution. And after that, we will use the CLI login, deploy, and the run script actions. So basically, these actions that I just explained are hosted in the PnP repository on GitHub. So we'll be consuming those in our workflow as tasks.
Just to say another word, they are also available in the GitHub actions store. Yes, yeah. Marketplace. Sorry.
Yeah, thank you. So before moving on to the demo, here are some of the helpful resources which will be pasted in the chat window. And yeah, so you can take a look at this for all the helpful information. Right. So that's a lot of slides. Let's move on to the demo. So over here, I have a GitHub GitHub repository with a basic SharePoint Framework web part. So what we have done here is set up a workflow, and as you can see in the workflow, I have said on push, use the Ubuntu latest machine, and then use the Node 10.x version. After that, the tasks are to install the dependencies using npm CI, which is the command specifically designed for continuous integration. And then we do a gulp bundle and gulp package solution. This will create the SPPKG file in SharePoint/solution. And then we log in to the tenant using the CLI login action. Then we deploy the package onto our tenant, and finally we run a script which will just send an email to say that the deployment is complete. So let's go ahead and quickly change the file. So I'll go to source part, that one. Of course, you'll be using an editor to change the file, but for this demo, I'll just use GitHub itself. Commit those changes. So this means I have now pushed a file into the repository, and when I click on actions, I should see the workflow that has kicked off. So there is one job, which is to build and deploy, and then you click on that. It gives you a nice user interface of how things progress. So as you can see, the actions that the steps that I just explained. So we are using Node.js 10.x, and then we are doing the npm CI, which installs all the dependencies. This will take about 25 to 30 seconds. So again, depending upon the host machine, it varies. So if it's Windows, it might it takes slightly longer or slightly less. So it all depends on the host machine that you choose. And then after the dependencies are installed, we are doing a gulp bundle and package solution. So these are the common tasks that we do with the SharePoint Framework project. And then we do run the Office 365 CLI login. So as part of this command, we are installing Office 365 CLI as well. So this is because on the host machine, Office 365 CLI is not pre-installed. So the login command takes care of that. And since CLI is installed, the next command, which is deploy, recognizes the script and deploys the app, and finally, we send an email saying that the deployment was complete. The whole workflow took 1 minute and 12 seconds. So if I just come over here and refresh my app catalog, you can see that the package was deployed just a few minutes back. And if I just quickly open my email, I should have received an email saying the deployment is done. So yeah, that's GitHub Actions for you. So hopefully you like the demo. And yeah, that's it from my side.
Yeah, how to get started? Just can you open the marketplace and just show everyone where they can find those actions, because this is important. Like once you go on, you can just type GitHub Actions Marketplace in Google, and
right, yeah.
And then if you type, there is a search box here, and if you type Office 365 CLI, you'll find those actions. This is basically your starting point, because here are the 3 actions, and every action has a nice explanation in it. The run script and deploy are dependent on login, so login will always be present in your flow, and the other one will be on depending on your need. But this is where, like, a starting point where you can go search for those and just install them in your pipelines. Thanks, Anup.
All right. Thank you very much.
Excellent. Thank you, Anup. Thank you, Velin. Super helpful for everybody who's automating things in a GitHub. Now, from a timing perspective, I think we need to flip directly to Paolo. And if there's any questions, please use the chat. Paolo, I can hear you reading. So
yep. Yes, I'm here. I'm still alive.
yes, that's good. That's good. That's a great start for the demo. So
yeah. So welcome everybody. Let's talk a little bit about the upcoming new schema for PnP provisioning. We are going to release with the next master merge of PnP Site Core a new release of the provisioning engine and a new release of the provisioning schema, as Bert already said before. So the schema will be schema 2020-02, so February 2020, and it is the next one after September 2019. We introduced just few new capabilities because likely we are almost feature complete. And so as soon as there is something new, we try to follow the object model of SharePoint and CSOM and all the REST APIs. But right now, we provide quite a lot of functionalities through the provisioning engine. Specifically, let me show you what we introduced with the latest and upcoming schema release, which will become the default one at the engine level as well. So here I am in the current master branch, but if I go to the experimental branch, which will be merged into master next week together with the master release of PnP Site Core, you can see that schema 2020-02 will become the default implemented version in the engine and in PnP PowerShell. And in order to reference the schema, you will simply have to use the 2020-02 version instead of the previous one. And I would suggest and remind you to configure in any provisioning template a reference to the schema location in order to have IntelliSense in Visual Studio whenever you edit the XML file. Let me move to the solution. Let me show you what are the upcoming new functionalities from a schema perspective. So first of all, let me start with the sample schema. We introduced at the tenant level, so in the PnP tenant element, a new child element for configuring the sharing settings at tenant level, of course. So here you can configure all of the sharing settings for your tenant. You can enable or disable sharing. You can configure the default permissions for sharing links. You can define the allow list or the block list of domains and stuff like that, simply using PnP provisioning engine and eventually PnP PowerShell. Moreover,
sorry, Paul,
yep.
Can you slightly increase the font?
Sure.
I know that I'm getting old, but
no worries. I'm
you.
getting old too, so no worries. Now I can see better as well. So, okay, so these are the settings that we introduced for the sharing settings. Moreover, another set of settings that we introduced are at web settings level and site settings level. So in order to better support the search experience, and specifically in modern sites, we introduced the search box in navbar option, where you can configure where you want to see and when you want to see the search box in navbar. And these are the options available, as well as the URL for the search center at web level. At the same time, we have the same settings for the site collections. So you can either configure these settings at the site collection only and inherit those settings at web level, or you can do custom settings in specific websites within a site collection and keep on having a predefined setting at site collection level using this section. Moreover, from a Teams perspective, and let me see if I'm lucky enough to find the PnP Teams element easily. Okay, not so easily. Okay, here we are. I have in the PnP team element where we can declare a new team that will be created or upgraded with the Delta handling. We introduced a new attribute, which is allow create private channels for member settings, because it's a new setting that you can nowadays configure using team. And last but not least, we introduced some other useful attributes in some already existing elements, like, for example, when you create in a sequence a site collection, which will be a team site with no Office 365 backing group, like in this scenario where I declare in a sequence that I want to create a site collection and that the site collection will be of type team site no group. Now we introduce the capability to groupify an already existing team site no group, which basically will become a modern team site with a group. So we can create or groupify that team later on, simply providing the groupify equal true attribute. And if you will do that, you will also have to provide an alias for the Office 365 group that will be created, as well as you can specify the classification. You can define if you want to have a public or a private group backing the team, and you can decide if you want to keep the old home page or if you want to convert to the new modern home page the site. So those are the main options that we introduced in the schema. Just to give you an idea about how it works, here I have a PowerShell session already opened. As you can clearly see, I'm a developer because I'm using PowerShell ICE and not the PowerShell console only, but okay, you can blame me if you want. But this is a session that I prepare where, first of all, I can show you how you can convert an already existing...
Sorry, Paolo, I will mess up your demo. All of the developers are using Visual Studio Code. So you're kind of a old school developer.
Yes, of course.
I'm still an ISE. So,
well,
sorry.
we already agreed that I'm old, so...
Fair point, fair point.
So here I have a schema which is based on 2019-09, and I want to convert that schema into the new schema version. You can easily do that using the convert PnP provisioning template commandlet. And let me show you how. Of course, here I have a schema, which I can show you using code because I'm becoming younger. And here we have the 2019-09 schema with all of the settings. And of course, you can use the convert PnP provisioning template. I will override the already existing one, and I can show you that the output will be an updated template with the new schema, and the update will not be just an update of the namespace reference, but actually, if there are any changes in the outline of the schema, we will keep them into account, because when we run the convert PnP provisioning template, we deserialize from the old schema and we serialize into the new schema. So we completely change the outline, if needed, of the provisioning template for you. And this is a very useful commandlet whenever you want to keep all of your templates up to date. Every now and then I still see customers who are running very old templates. They should simply convert them with convert PnP provisioning template toward the latest release. Once you have a template, you can connect to a site. Let me do that. And this will be a site that I'm using just for the sake of showing you the new functionalities. So let me log in. And this site I'm going to use is the following one. If I can find it, here it is. This is the target site, and I'm going to update some of the settings of the sharing settings in this site. So if you look here in the sharing policies, I don't have any sharing settings, so I simply cannot share content in this demo tenant. And if I look inside the old school page, we can see that we don't have any sharing capability outside of the organization, and those are the default settings that I have in my tenant. What I can do by applying this template that I will show you, I can configure sharing for external users and guests. I can configure 30 days of expire policy for links. The default file link will be for view. The default folder will be for edit and stuff like that. So you can see here all of the settings, including, for example, an allow list for the well-known contoso.com. So if I run the apply PnP provisioning template against the current site, providing that XML template, you will see that in a matter, oops, I didn't connect properly, sorry about that. But luckily I was already connected before, so I'm still good that I provided a wrong password, but still it worked because I was already connected before. And now if I go back here and I refresh this page, you will see that now I have all of the settings that I configured in the provisioning template. So I was able, using PnP provisioning, to set up my tenant from a sharing perspective, as well as from a search setting perspective. If we have a look at the template, here we configure at the web settings and at the site settings some parameters for the search center URL, for example. And if I go to my site, in the site collection settings, you can see that I have exactly the search center URL that I configured using my PnP provisioning template. So pretty useful. And as I said, just few small changes to the already existing schema, because basically we are almost feature complete. And so we try to do our best to be always up to date. And as soon as there are useful new capabilities in CSOM or in the REST APIs or in Microsoft Graph, we include them in the schema. And usually we have a release every 3-4 months. So 3-4 releases every year. That's all on my side. If there are any questions, feel free to ask, or if there is any feedback, Vesa, I'm all ears.
Yeah, I think that's it for now. So, and like I said, so just to kind of a recap, the provisioning engine and the schema, so which you can use to automate things in Microsoft Teams. It supports OneDrive, SharePoint, multi-site collections, all of that stuff. And you can automate tenant level settings or site level settings. And the easiest way to actually see provisioning engine or one implementation of the provisioning engine in practice is to go to lookbook.microsoft.com. But behind the scenes, there's multiple ways of configuring an automation of tenants. And maybe some of you who are listening might be like, yeah, why would I set those tenant settings using a tenant template? Well, maybe it doesn't make sense for you, but there are customers and partners who are automating hundreds of tenants and automating and controlling hundreds of tenants. And for them, controlling the tenant level settings in this kind of a way with templates makes perfect sense. I think that's it for now. Paolo, I'm going to steal the presentation to my side just to
close up.
Thank you. Just to close up the call as well. There was a Q&As going on all the time in the chat window. We hopefully answered all of them. If we didn't, and if you have a question, you have issues or a question, go to the AKMS SP Dev issue list and ask the question over there, because that's the easiest way to get response on your questions, potential issues, or hey, this doesn't seem to work, something might be wrong. Go there, ask a question. We have engineers, we have MVPs helping on those incoming questions as well. Now, the next SharePoint Dev Special Interest Group call is on February 20th. The next SharePoint Framework call is on 13th of February, next Thursday, so a week from now. But actually on next Tuesday, we also have the monthly community call. And we have that special moment where we have everybody, the main people from the SharePoint Framework engineering present, help answering on your questions. So if you're wondering on where is SharePoint Framework going, or why isn't X and Y and Z working, or are we thinking something, suggesting things, please go to the call and submit our questions beforehand. The agenda will go actually in the social media live later today or tomorrow, and you'll see the URLs to submit your questions. In general, if you're looking into what's happening, AKMS SP Dev PnP, or you can find all of the links to our YouTube videos, community calls, and all of that stuff. But I think that's it for now. So thank you everybody for joining. Thank you, Paolo. Thank you, Anup. Thank you, Chris. Awesome demos once again. Recording will be out within 24 hours in our YouTube channel. And thank you, David, again on helping with all of the links. Super valuable as well. But I think that's it for now. Thank you, everybody. Cheers. We'll meet you hopefully within next week, next Tuesday in a monthly call. Bye-bye.